All right, answering more of your questions this time, starting with this one from Something Classic, because I thought it was a really interesting question. They ask, can Western studios make JRPGs? And of course, Something Classic is the people behind Shadows of Adam and the upcoming game Quartet. And again, indie developer, they spend a lot of time thinking about RPGs, and no doubt they've probably spent some time thinking about this. There are some people who, for whatever reason, continue to this day to say Japanese RPGs can only be made by Japanese people, and that Western style RPGs are made by Western people, right? At first glance, that statement seems to make some sort of sense until you really start to consider some of those edge cases and talk about like what's the point of genre definition in the first place? Genre definitions are just shorthand for saying this is what to expect from a game. But if you're designating an entire genre to just tell you the country of origin, I mean, country of origin doesn't tell you anything about what the game looks like, about how it plays. It just tells you maybe where it came from. The way that I like to think of the Japanese RPG genre is more of a Japanese style of RPG, which means that it doesn't anymore have to be limited to this country of origin or who's involved necessarily and who's producing the game, but tells you more about what style they're aiming for with that release. That's also an important distinction because there's some games that were made in Japan that feel like Western style RPGs, you know, Dark Souls, for instance, or games that were made in the United States that feel like Japanese RPGs, like Secret of Evermore and Final Fantasy IX, for instance. And if somebody wants to tell you that Final Fantasy IX is not a JRPG, well, I guess I don't know what to tell you. Callous Baxor asks, how's your cat doing today? And the reason they're probably asking about how my cat is doing is because a couple of months ago, I actually, my cat had a stroke, which was really sad. We thought we were going to have to put him down, but he managed to pull through surprisingly well to the point where even now, he's just, like before he couldn't even walk. Like his hind legs didn't work. Within a week, he was walking around again, like not super steady on his feet, but he was able to walk around and eat on his own. And today he's like jumping up on countertops like nothing ever happened. So he's doing great. I can only hope that someday when I am a senior like him, that I have that sort of resiliency. It's actually kind of bizarre. You could never tell to look at him today that he had any sort of issue going on. Thanks for asking. Puny Magus asks, would I rather be allowed to play a video game but deprived of my game collection, or keep your collection and deprived of playing video games forever? That's an easy question, actually. I mean, it's neither option is obviously ideal, but I would much rather be able to play them rather than just like look at them. I feel like not being able to play video games but having to look at them for all eternity sounds like some sort of deep level of hell, you know, where you're just taunted forever by your possessions, forever prevented from being able to hold them dear. It'd be like having your pets held in a zoo and you're not allowed to like go and pet your kitty, you know, like that's just wrong. I would much rather be able to play the games and I could just, you know, look at pictures of them later if I needed to. Luckily, I'm in a position where that's not a requirement for either direction. So, hooray us. We can play the games that we want and keep them forever. Ah, my blood pressure coming back down. Gwip1408 asks, what is the best JRPG franchise to do a marathon style playthrough? And for the last few years, I've made a policy generally of avoiding playing marathons of video game series to help prevent burnout of not just myself, but also my viewers and people who watch me over on Twitch. I feel like I need to sort of alternate my way through different genres at this point, or subgenres really. So I like to kind of alternate between action RPG and traditional turn-based RPG, and maybe throw in a Western RPG. I like to do the alternating thing because that's what helps keep me from getting burnt out. I talked about that as one of the strategies to defeat your backlog and defeat RPGs, the SuperDerek way. Which, you know, was a pretty popular video of mine. I should probably revisit that subject at some point. But one of the things that comes to mind is, if only for the fact of being able to keep all of that information downloaded, I feel like the Kiseki series, the Trails series that is known in the West, has a lot of small details and a lot of interconnecting threads of story. And I think it's probably best to play those within somewhat rapid succession, lest you have to try to re-download all of the events of the previous games. Being able to kind of play them in relatively short succession allows you to keep some things basically in RAM, so to speak, instead of having to write it down to a spinning hard disk that's harder and slower to recover data from. I don't know why I'm suddenly using computer analogies, but I think that's probably my current choice, because a lot of other game series that I would love to marathon through, a lot of them don't have stories that continue on game after game after game. On the other hand, I'm finding out that Golden Sun does have some of that sort of continuation going on, and they're also shorter games. At least the first two are relatively short because they're on a handheld, so they're not too bad to marathon your way through those either, I suppose. Again, I try to sort of avoid marathoning series at this point if I can. This one comes from OC, who says, what do you think about aging and the way we experience JRPGs as we grow up? And that is a really interesting open-ended question that I feel somewhat ill-qualified to respond to, because I deny having grown up at all over the last few years. No, but seriously, there is a little bit of a weirdness to being in my mid-30s now, where I'm playing video games starring kids half my age. Except, that's the thing about getting older, is that really it's your body that's the one telling you that you're older. At least for me, it's not my mind. In my mind, I'm still, some 24-year-old out there in Seattle. That is one thing that I do think would be nice, is to experience more RPGs with older casts that experience life, beyond the end of high school. I mean, the way that JRPGs kind of treat people, like Sid, for instance, from Final Fantasy VII. How old was he? He was like 28, but they called him old man and stuff, like he's practically got 1 foot in the grave already. That's sort of how Japan in particular treats a lot of their older than like 20 somethings, at least in media and anime and video games, is like basically you're in high school and then after that you're dead. That said, having played through a bit of Shin Megami Tensei Soul Hackers 2, where you're actually playing as like college aged and beyond, that's kind of nice. I think Persona 2 Eternal Punishment was also another one where you're actually playing as adults, which, I feel like that's just kind of far and few between. There are others where you do play as older people, or you have the token older guy. Like Final Fantasy X, you had Auron who joined your party, and he looks like he's maybe in his late 30s, early 40s or so. I don't know. And by the way, is it spoilers to tell you he was actually literally dead, which is not really helping my point all that much, I guess, but it's kind of funny. That's kind of my floating freeform thoughts on aging and playing Japanese RPGs. Hoodley says, what is a quality of life feature that I wish every JRPG could have? When you're too strong, when you're fighting against weaker enemies, having them run away from you in fear for their lives would be so cool. Yeah, that's something that happens in certain games, like Earthbound, for instance, and some of the Persona games. If you're like fighting shadows in Tartarus, they'll run away from you and stuff as well. But it'd be nice to sort of see that more often in just every video game, honestly, because the moment you go back to your like hometown stomping grounds and you encounter like a pack of 3 slimes, you would think that after you just like, flick one out of existence, that the other 2 would be like, oh my God, we gotta run. And then they, hightail it out of there. That's something that I feel like would really enhance that feeling of getting super strong and powerful, while also reducing the amount of tedium when it comes to travel and exploration, or seeing them run away from you on the world map like in Earthbound. Yeah, that's something that should be in every RPG at this point, as far as I'm concerned. Real Teo says, what is your comfort food JRPG that you like to play when you're feeling down and under the weather? When I'm under the weather, the chicken soup for the JRPG loving soul is definitely something turn-based, something that I've played a lot of over the years, something that I can sort of half pay attention to as I make my way through it. And for me, I think a lot of that's got to be like Chrono Trigger and Earthbound. It's a lot of the basic games. I mean, they're incredible games, but basic in the sense of like I've played through them, a dozen, 2 dozen times, and when you're sick, you're just kind of going through the motions and just kind of you can't really focus your eyes. Sometimes you might get lightheaded, so you just want to put the controller down for a minute. That's why I think, something turn-based, preferably turn off ATB. So Chrono Trigger, you'd want to put that on wait instead of active. That way you can, close your eyes for a moment, pass out as needed, let the room spins die down for a minute, and then you can pick the controller back up where you left off and continue on. That's really, I think, the best sort of situation when you're just sick and can't play games really like fully engaged. Pokemon is another perfect example of a game like early Gen 1, Gen 2 Pokemon. That's something that I would also definitely call chicken soup for the RPG loving soul, especially because there is no plot to follow, really. It's just go out there, catch them all, and beat up some gym leaders. So, wow, I guess this one went on a little bit longer than I expected, but hey, I hope you enjoyed your time here this evening, this day. If you have questions that you would like for me to respond to in one of these sorts of videos, leave those questions down below. Otherwise, I've got a pile of them that I'm going to continue reading from over the next several weeks, I'm sure. So get subscribed because I'm SuperDerek. I make thoughtful and thought-provoking videos for gamers who love RPGs, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great day, everybody.